Cageside with John Morgan.
And welcome, everybody. Another episode of Cageside with John Morgan. I'm your host, Eric McMahon. I apologize for the mix-up last week. I was on a work convention. Forgot to tell my esteemed colleague and co-host, John Morgan, about it. So we had to miss the episode, but you got some dope interviews out of it. With that being said, we are looking forward this Saturday, UFC 304, Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad. In addition, Jake Paul stabbed us in the heart again. But if you're a hater on this guy, I'm going to tell you why you should not be a hater on this guy. So to help break all this down, let me bring in the man I left standing at the altar last week, getting ready to record. I said, oh, snap, I'm in Orlando. I can't. Follow him on X, John Morgan _MMA. His name is John Morgan. What's up, pal?
Hey, I'm good, man. These are one of my favorite kind of weeks, right? We got a UFC pay-per-view coming up. That gets excited. I also got a CFFC event that I'm working the night before as well. So, you know, I love getting to be on the mic, and I love getting to talk about big pay-per-view events. So I'm excited for this week. But I'm very happy that you stepped up to the table because I want the record to reflect. It was not me. I'm texting you. I'm like, hey, man, I was thinking about maybe we should talk about this. I wanted to bring your expertise on this. And you're like, oh, my bad. I forgot to tell you I'm not even in town. So let the record reflect. I wanted to do an episode of Cageside with John Morgan, but alas, we progressed.
You know, like on a Tuesday when you're like, hey, I need to text somebody or call somebody and let them know I'll do it later today. And then the next morning you wake up, I didn't do it. I'm going to do it today. And then eventually you just don't. Yeah, that was one of those situations.
It's almost like you're trying to tell me you got a lot of stuff going on in your life, and from time to time maybe something falls through the cracks. It's almost like you're saying you're a busy man at home and at the office, at the multiple offices. So no apology necessary, but let's not let that happen again, damn it.
Well, I make no promises, never say never. But I will try my damnedest not to. With that being said, where do we want to start? 3 or 4? Do we want to start with Jake Paul? I'll leave it in your court.
I mean, listen, we got to talk about 304. We got to preview that. But I would say we start with Jake Paul. Let's look in the past and talk about what just happened before we look to the future of what's going on this week.
Jake Paul, TKO's platinum Mike Perry in the 6th round of what I would say it was a completely mismatched boxing match. Would you agree?
Yeah, I hate to say that, but I would agree. And as I'm sure you'll allude to, on multiple fronts, both in terms of skill level and also size disparity. I mean, we knew there was going to be a big height and weight discrepancy between these two, but when they got in there on fight night, it was almost comical in the way that it looked.
Now, let's let the record reflect that it was contested at 200 pounds. Both men met the limit. Jake Paul did not meet it on his first attempt. And Mike Perry came in 6 pounds under the limit, which says to me that he didn't diet at all, probably ate a full breakfast. I don't even know if he weighed in his skivvies. I think he had shorts on.
Might have had a couple rolls of quarters packed in his pockets, you know what I mean, just to help out. Yeah, absolutely.
So there was a huge size discrepancy, and that gets into the controversy of Jake Paul through a lot of the pundits and I don't know, I guess more insiders into the fight game. They both say, well, it was only 6 pounds. It ain't 6 pounds. It's more like 36 pounds at that point.
Yeah, 100%, because Jake was definitely cutting down, right, to reach that limit, and then he's going to rehydrate back. I mean, obviously, we see that more in mixed martial arts, you know, the real severe weight cuts and the big rehydrations than we do see in boxing traditionally. But, you know, Jake is cutting weight and getting down. He does have the wrestling background as well. So, I mean, listen, he's man, it was a huge size difference. It was obvious. If you knew nothing about fighting whatsoever, you would look at it and be like, my goodness, look at the difference between these two.
Now, as I told you off air, I had the pleasure of going down to Louisville, Kentucky yesterday and attending an ABC training of bare knuckle fighting. Okay. And I say that it's misconception that people say it's bare knuckle boxing. It's not bare knuckle boxing. It's bare knuckle fighting, right? It's not bare knuckle mixed martial arts. It's bare knuckle fighting. And I'm going to tell you why it's fighting and not boxing. The rule set is 100% different. What you can do in bare knuckle, or, and people say bare knuckle boxing because BKFC, right?
Right.
And they kind of call it bare knuckle boxing. But it's really a fight because the rule set of traditional boxing and the rule set of bare knuckle fighting and or boxing, however you want to describe it, it's apples and oranges. And that comes into play in a fight like this. It's serendipitous that I actually took this training yesterday because I can tell you exactly a lot of the major differences. And everybody says, okay, well, Mike Perry, he's finally fighting a real boxer. No, Mike Perry's not a real boxer. He's not. If you saw his training footage, that was apparent before the fight.
Yeah, he's a guy that definitely enjoys training boxing, right? And of course, he does boxing as part of his regimen, and he's done some amateur work and all that, but he is not a boxer on the level of Jake Paul by any stretch whatsoever. So certainly a discrepancy in skill and experience as well. But I hadn't really thought about what you're talking about with the difference in rule set. And because we have kind of leaned towards calling it bare knuckle boxing, but I mean, even in the name of it, it's bare knuckle fighting championship. And I kind of wonder, now that I think about it, I wonder if that was a David Feldman, the founder of BKFC, if that was his approach to market as bare knuckle boxing, because obviously the sport of boxing, as they were trying to gain approval, started out as a bare knuckle sport. And so I imagine being presented as bare knuckle boxing, in fact, I remember when they launched it, they brought about the ties to the 1800s and such and how this used to exist. And that's why they made the connection. But you're absolutely right. It isn't necessarily bare knuckle boxing. It is bare knuckle fighting. And I hadn't really thought about that before. That's an interesting observation.
I'm giving you a layup. Ask me what the differences are.
What are the differences, Eric? I assumed that you were going to expound on those differences, considering you spent an afternoon in a training session, made a long drive back and forth. I assumed you weren't keeping that in your back pocket today.
I was. You were right. I'm just trying to sound more special than I really am. Okay, so when we think traditional boxing, space and range are the premium, right? If I can dictate my range and stop you from encroaching my space, I always have the tactical advantage in boxing, especially if my reach is better. You look at you look like the Klitschko brothers, Lennox Lewis, exceptional at it. They never got touched. Right? That's not how bare knuckle is contested. Okay. So once in a regular boxing match, once the distance is closed from here and there's any type of clinch, what happens in a traditional boxing match?
Referee steps in, says, I need a clean break, backs them away, resets them at distance.
At distance, at range. And then fighter A, if he's the smaller, has to do the work to get in to work on the inside.
Right.
But all it takes is an overhook to stop it, to have the ref expand him again. That is in polar contrast to bare knuckle fighting.
Right.
Okay. So there's multiple rules. You can have a single collar tie literally to the back of the head in bare knuckle and be ripping. Mike Perry is a master at that. That is not allowed in boxing.
Right.
It's contested at range. Mike Perry in bare knuckle fighting contests all his in short distance, and you are allowed to clinch. You are allowed to hold around the waist. You are allowed to take a deep underhook or overhook or whizzer or single collar tie plum and blast away. You are not allowed to do any of that in boxing.
I was going to say, because it's almost the opposite, right? And to further the differences, you can hold on to those positions as long as you remain active, right? I mean, as long as you remain punching in BKFC, bare knuckle rules, you're allowed to keep that. Whereas it's the exact opposite in boxing. Not only can you not have those, but as soon as you're in those positions, you're told you better stop. And if you keep punching that position, you're doing something dirty and you need to quit it.
So I would venture to say if this was contested under those rules, now Mike Perry has the clear advantage. Size or not. He knows that rule set. He fights under that rule set. He trains under that rule set, and he is a master in that rule set. Boxing, not so much.
No, not at all, unfortunately. We saw that on display right from the start, right? I mean, there was an early knockdown in round one that, it looked maybe a little bit off balance, a little bit almost a push, if you will, or maybe just kind of it didn't look like a clean knockdown to me. It was scored as such, and I don't fault the referee for doing that because it was on a punch and it did go down. But second round, though, clearly dropped. And at that point, man, just looked like this was going to be an absolutely ugly fight. And, for the most part, it was very much one-sided. I do give Mike Perry a lot of credit for showing the heart. I mean, that's what we said going in, right, is that at least Jake Paul is going to see a fighter, a guy that's not going to wilt, a guy that's not going to back away. And I did see that from Mike Perry, right? He didn't wilt. He kept moving forward. He kept trying to press, but there were really no big shining moments where you thought, oh my goodness, Platinum Mike Perry is turning this around. Can you believe it? It was really just kind of, I don't know, admiring his durability, admiring his toughness, admiring his willingness to get in there. And as you said, man, it was just kind of it was kind of a hard one to watch. My energy was real low after the second round. I'm going to tell you that. I'm like, oh my God, because I like Mike Perry, man. The guy has become a star in BKFC. He was fun in the UFC. And I credit him a lot for taking this challenge and taking this very, very uphill battle. To his credit, man, he did keep trying. But there was just nothing really for Jake Paul in the end.
Yeah, and I just go back to strategic picking of your opponents is pure genius here, right?
Brilliant.
And I want to go back to the rule set really quick, right? Because if anybody who doesn't have an institutional knowledge, and then I would say guys like me and you, our institutional knowledge is probably on even a bigger level than that. Right. I could tell you all the time, I run multiple gyms. One of the gyms that I have is, we do kids self-defense. On one day we do striking, on one day we do wrestling, and on one day we do jiu-jitsu. And then on Saturday, we kind of show how to blend them all together. It's almost mixed martial arts, but we segment them out. And I explain to parents, hey, if you want your child to be able to protect themselves, this is the only course to do. And a lot of parents say, well, my kid wants to do boxing. And I said, okay, well, that's because of Jake Paul and Prime Energy Drink and yada, yada. Okay, and that's great. Like, I'm not talking smack about boxing. I love boxing. But it's not really a self-defense. And they're like, huh? And I go, okay, have you ever watched a boxing match? They say, yeah. And I go, what happens when they get here? And they go, huh? And I go, the ref says, stop, break. That's not real life. Unless you one-hitter quitter somebody, a guy like me is going to close the distance on you. The first thing, I'm not standing at range with anybody in a street fight because anybody could get lucky.
Right.
I'm going to utilize my skills at that point. So that's what I try to press upon parents. That is a long way of saying that Mike Perry, I have full capability, I say this with full vigor. In a fight, he would probably kill Jake Paul. Right? But under that rule set, it was a sport.
Yeah.
And Jake Paul was better at that sport.
Yep.
Because of the rule set. Now, if Mike Perry could have got in there, hugged a tight waist, and just started ripping shots everywhere and wouldn't have been broken up and have no fear of closing the distance, Mike Perry throws one big looping in shot, gets right on the inside, and then bludgeons you. Ask Luke Rockhold, right? Luke Rockhold could not. He is a master at using range and distance, even in MMA.
Yep. You're spot on with that because, I mean, look, and again, it's not to denigrate boxing, right? I mean, it's the sweet science for a reason, right? I mean, guys that are high-level boxers that is what they specialize in. They're so fun to watch because they're so good with their hands. They're so good with the head movement. They're so good with the body work and pivoting and just, I mean, it's beautiful to watch. It is an art, but it's an art that limits the rule set, as you said. It's one reason for me personally, and again, it's not to denigrate boxing, but I always say you can't call boxing a fight. That is a match. That is a bout. That is whatever you want to call it. But it's not a fight. A fight to me is when there are no rules or the rules are so limited that every tactic and technique essentially is available to you, i.e. mixed martial arts. So you're absolutely right. It would level things out a little bit and level the playing field for sure. Size difference was still a big deal between these two. But, if it was a mixed martial arts contest or even BKFC, you're right. Mike Perry has a lot better chance of this. But I think that also goes to something that you said earlier about not doubting Jake Paul as a boxer. I think a lot of people want to write this guy off and say that he's just a joke. He's just a marketing guy. He's just a YouTube guy. He's just a whatever. And he's not. He is brilliant at marketing. He is brilliant at speaking to the younger generation and understand and gaining attention and getting a following. But he's also a damn good boxer as well. I don't think, he likes to say that he'll beat Canelo someday. I don't know that he's that level of boxer, but he's a more legitimate boxer than a lot of people want to give him credit for. And you touched on as well the picking of opponents. I mean, look, he's 10-1 at this point. Most boxers at 10-1 or 10-0 or whatever it may be aren't fighting anybody. Go through your favorite boxer. Go to boxrec.com and go find your favorite boxer of all time and go look at who they fought in their first 10 or 11 fights and look at the records of the people that they were competing against in those matchups. And you're going to go, oh, never mind. I guess I should be quiet now. This is just what you do in boxing.
Yeah, I mean, here's where I want to go with this. And I'm saying don't be a hater on Jake Paul.
Mm-hmm.
We are clearly MMA guys.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of MMA people are hating on Jake Paul. And then they're like, oh, fight somebody your size, fight somebody this. Fight. I mean, we've heard all the excuses. I said this to a friend yesterday morning as I'm making the drive. I said, I like Jake Paul. Yeah. And he was like, he's such a D-bag. He's such this, he's that. He doesn't fight anybody's size. I said, you know what this guy has done? He gave Ben Askren the biggest payday of his career. He gave Tyrone Woodley the biggest payday of his career. He gave Anderson Silva the biggest payday of his career. He gave Nate Diaz the biggest payday of his career. And I venture to say he gave Mike Perry the biggest payday of his career. So he benefited our heroes and accomplished his goal at the same time. Yep. This is what we call a win-win.
It's a great point. I mean, here's the thing is, and I openly admit, I was cheering for Mike Perry in this, right? Like
we all were.
Every time Jake Paul fights an MMA guy, I am openly cheering for the MMA guy because, as you said, we're MMA guys. I mean, that's my background is in covering the sport of mixed martial arts, and I interview these guys and I talk to these guys, and I want to see them do well. But just because quote unquote our guys, the MMA guys, end up losing doesn't mean you got to hate on the guy that beat him. You just got to go like, damn it. He did it again. He did it again. Let's tee up somebody else, and maybe we'll get him the next time around. But I don't think you have to hate on the guy for what he's doing. And I love what you said there. I mean, he's getting these guys paid, and he's getting the money. And let's be honest, it doesn't impact any of their legacies in mixed martial arts or in BKFC. And I think that's what's kind of fun about this. But it's also what kind of sometimes, like when Diaz fought Masvidal, I kind of wonder, like, what are the stakes in this? Because it doesn't really impact their overall legacies in mixed martial arts. So I think it's a kind of a double-edged sword, but it's a fun opportunity. I mean, look at on this same card. Like Uriah Hall went out there and got a paycheck, right? Lost, but he got a paycheck. He got to compete. He got to do what he loves. You know what I mean? You spend a lifetime training, and you want to get out there and do what you love. Maybe you're not able to do it at the same level that you did it in your, preferred discipline or your best discipline, but you're still getting to go out there and compete. And I think that's awesome, man. So yeah, I don't understand the hate for Jake Paul. I did in the beginning. If you thought, man, this was a guy that isn't really committed, I kind of understood in the beginning, questioning the man's motivation, questioning why he was getting involved with this. Was he really going to take this seriously? Was this going to be a sideshow? But I think he's showing it's not any of that. He's taking the training serious. He's taking the sport serious, and he's trying to do good things with it. And his team has figured out a way to make a lot of money doing it. And I understand it's frustrating to see the MMA guys take losses, but I don't think that means you got to step away and say you hate Jake Paul.
Furthermore, you should step away and say this guy's a marketing genius. Like, genius.
Yep.
Okay? Who is the biggest name? Okay, bare knuckle boxing has a merger or has a partnership with the biggest name in mixed martial arts ever. Conor McGregor gets a lot more eyeballs on it. Who's the biggest superstar in bare knuckle fighting right now?
Mike Perry.
Who am I going to call out to bring an audience to me who has a, credibility that's going to add more credibility to me as a boxer, knowing that I know for a fact I'm taking him out of his element, but the general masses don't think don't know I'm taking him out of his element.
That's
who
true.
you going to pick? That is brilliant.
It is brilliant. They've done a great job over and over. And I get it. I understand why there are people who say, and look, if you want to step back and say, yeah, but he hasn't fought it. He fights Anderson Silva when he's way too old. He fights Nate Diaz. The size, like all those criticisms are true, right? That's all 100% true. But that's what I'm saying is anybody saying he's the top pound for pound boxer on the planet right now? Because if you're making the argument that Jake Paul is the top pound for pound boxer on the planet right now, then yes, you need to have all those criticisms and say, let me tell you why that is absolutely not true, because he's not fought the real competition of his level, of his age, of his size. But if you're just saying the guy is going out there and getting experience and finding a very interesting way to get people to tune in to what normally in a boxer's career would just be facing club fights in 4-round bouts inside some ballroom. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, nobody's paying attention to most 8-0 boxers or 9-0, 10-1. They're not paying attention to because they're still racking it up. Again, go look at the records of people in the early days. So I like what the guy's doing, man. You can't argue with his success financially. And to me, you can't argue with how serious he's taking things, right? And, look, continues to give a platform to Amanda Serrano as well, who's like a top pound-for-pound women's boxer who the women have traditionally been underpaid and not paid on the same level as men, and he's doing a good job of trying to bring exposure to that as well. So I really just don't understand the hate, to be honest with you.
And furthermore, when he fought, so Ben Askren, I don't think a lot of people thought Ben Askren was going to win, right? No. But the layman's all picked Tyrone Woodley, albeit a D1 wrestler. They all picked Tyrone Woodley. They all picked Anderson Silva. They were all they were mixed on Nate Diaz because now we were getting Jake Paul was kind of legitimate. But still, I think most people thought Mike Perry was just going to bludgeon him on the inside. Right? He's just smarter. So he does have credibility. All the fans that say he's going to lose to these guys, he's beaten them all. And I now this is going to be my bridge to the next thing. He calls out 2 people afterwards, Mike Tyson and Alex Pereira. And both of them are brilliant call outs. Brilliant.
I'm interested to hear that you say that because, all right, obviously we know that Mike Tyson, when the fight was first announced with Mike Tyson, we outlined both why we thought that was brilliant, right? Why we thought it was just the perfect matchup. I think we were in the minority in that one. Obviously.
Yeah, Mike Tyson was in a walker when it got announced.
Yeah, I was going to say, now talking about nobody wants to see Mike Tyson go out there and get knocked out by Jake Paul. Nobody wants to see that. But we talked about why it was brilliant. But the Alex Pereira one is interesting, right? Because I think a lot of people feel like it was a wasted call out. I actually think it's brilliant as well. And I haven't spoken to you about this yet. You've been busy. I've been busy. So I want to hear why you think it's a brilliant call out and see if it matches why I thought it was pretty genius.
Because he knows it will never happen.
Yes, he knows it will never happen. But to further that, he knows it will never happen, yet he knows Dana White's going to get asked about it. Alex Pereira is going to get asked about it. He's going to remain in conversations going forward because people are going to ask about it. And this is funny. Obviously, the journalist hat on me thinks, but I know how the journalism industry works, the media industry works. True MMA journalists know that fight's never going to happen. It's almost not even worth bringing up to Alex Pereira or even bringing up to Dana White because it's not going to happen. But you need clicks, and you need storylines, and you need headlines, and your website needs views. So you're going to ask about it. You're going to ask about it in a press conference, even though as that journalist, that this is impossible. The UFC does not do co-promotions. They don't do boxing. It's not going to happen. But you're going to bring it up anyway because you want those clicks, you want those headlines. And Jake Paul ensured, and it's brilliant too because he doesn't need to line up another fight. His other fight is already lined up with Mike Tyson. So some might say, well, that was a wasted call out. You look at guys like Chael Sonnen and like Daniel Cormier who love kind of the professional wrestling side of the business and they love the promotional side of the business. And they'll talk about, when you get that mic in your hands, don't waste that call out because you only get that one opportunity. And some might step back and say, well, that was a wasted call out because it's never going to happen. It was not a wasted call out because he will be in the conversations and he didn't even need to have a call out anyway because we already know Mike Tyson is happening in November on Netflix. So I'm with you. I thought it was brilliant and I promise you it's going to remain in the conversation moving forward, even though it'll never happen.
He is the man, the problem child. is the man we all love to hate, but oh, my hair's mad. I'm taking off my hat here.
Don't ever take your hat off again. Just.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, I will continue to cheer against him every single time he faces an MMA fighter. But I respect what he's done.
You damn right we will.
Mm-hmm.
We, Goose. All right, let's look forward. UFC 304, Manchester, England, this Saturday. The champion, Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad, the perennial challenger who should have had who's been the number one contender for the last 3 years, finally getting a shot this Saturday. Now, this line shocked me a little bit. Have you seen the line?
I have not seen it yet, at least recently. I know Leon Edwards is a favorite. I would assume minus 180.
You're close. Basically 220. Minus 220.
Okay. Bigger than I thought.
Belal's and styles make fights, right? And here's why that shocks me. I can see this being the boringest fight of all time.
Yes.
And the way Belal Muhammad fights, he's going to close the distance on you. He's going to grapple box you. He's going to, keep you guessing. But the game plan was laid out for him by Kamaru Usman. Put him against the cage.
Yep.
Hold him against the cage for 5 rounds.
Yep.
You don't have to take him down.
100%. Look, there's a reason that when the UFC was scrambling and desperate for a headliner at UFC 300, remember that? Remember when they had no main event? And here we are, and this is this is the fight we need. And boy, this welterweight title fight's out there. Did you consider that? Nope, absolutely did not consider that, right? Because this really does have the propensity to be a boring fight. Now, I understand that may not excite fans. If you're Belal Muhammad, I don't think you can care one bit, and I don't think he does care one bit. I think he's entering with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. You know what I mean? And I think look, I don't care. Boo me all you want. Boo me all you want, because I'm walking out of here with the belt, with the paychecks, with the cherry on top of everything that I've worked for to show that I was deserving of that. So I don't think he's the kind of guy that is so mentally strong and so uncaring about the court of public opinion that he's not going to be, thinking of varying from the game plan whatsoever, even if he's getting vehemently booed in Edwards' backyard in England, right? So I think he is the guy that is mentally strong and disciplined enough to stick to a game plan, regardless of whether it's exciting or not, bank those rounds and do what it takes. But you're absolutely right about this. It has the potential of being a very unexciting matchup.
Leon Edwards is really good at preventing a takedown. We saw it in Kamaru Usman too. We've seen it in the Colby Covington fight. Where he does struggle is getting off the cage, though.
Yes, his defensive wrestling is sound, but he gets stuck in that position a lot. Like, he's doing all the right things. He's got that cool little 2-on-1 defense, that he does. It's brilliant, right? But he doesn't necessarily immediately pivot off and switch back to the center, right? He allows himself to kind of get in that position. To me, it almost equates to guys who are like comfortable on their back in guard, but aren't realizing that they're giving away the round by working from their back. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's what I feel like we've seen in spurts throughout his career, where it's like he feels safe there. And we see that with guys on the ground, right? Well, he's not punching me right now. He's not really trying to submit me. I feel good here in guard. I'm okay. And then the bell sounds. You're like, wait a minute. I just spent 3.5 minutes on my back. Uh-oh. That probably didn't look very good to the judges. And I think that's what Leon Edwards kind of does sometimes. And I think that's the danger for him here. Like, I don't think Belal Muhammad's knocking out Leon Edwards. You know what I mean? Like, I know he's got some, he'll strike and he'll throw, as he said. He's kind of wrestle boxing, but I don't think he's doing that. I think Leon Edwards is the more seasoned striker, of course, but Belal's also, I don't think Belal has any intention whatsoever of standing in kickboxing range at all. So, this could be a dirty, grimy type of fight, but it's a fight that I don't think you can count Belal Muhammad out of.
Hell no.
You know what I'm saying?
I think he's going to win the fight.
I'm telling you, it's a distinct possibility. It really is. I mean,
because for everything you just said about a guy who does not care what people think, right? Even Colby Covington, with all this bravado, he still cares. He'll back off to hit some strikes to then go back into that clinch on the cage. I can promise you, when Belal Muhammad puts Leon Edwards against the cage, he don't give a shit.
100%. And think about this, right? Like, I'm happy to see Leon Edwards get the respect that he deserves, right? 100%. This man worked hard, and man, that emotions. I mean, the night he won the belt, the emotions, the look at me now. I mean, come on. I mean, how is that not one of the most, pounding on the belt, like fighting back tears. I heard all the doubts. But hold on. We were 56 seconds away from the story being entirely different, right? I mean, I'm sitting there cage side that night going, yeah, man, kind of thought this is what was going to happen. Usman was just, Usman didn't necessarily destroy him. Usman didn't necessarily, it wasn't like he was ever in danger of being finished, but you're like, well, pretty clear who's walking away with this. I'm starting to pack my computer up into my bag so we can head back to the press conference and talk to Kamaru Usman about his latest title defense.
And Usman could have very easily put him against the cage for that 5th round too.
100%. And he didn't. So, that's one of the greatest moments in UFC history, right? But it's one of the greatest moments in UFC history because of what would have happened had it not happened. That changed everything, right? So, that's a fight that he was losing for 24 minutes and that he was in it. And granted, he had the takedown and there were moments and that sort of thing. I'm not trying to discount everything and saying, oh, he only had one moment. That was it. No, he had moments throughout the fight. But I'm just saying, as much as we think about that fight based on that one incredible highlight, you got to think about what happened in the rest of it as well. And I think Belal Muhammad is certainly thinking about that. And man, I'm telling you, this intrigues me. And it probably intrigues me. I could see the casual fan, the casual consumer just saying like, I'm not really excited for this, man. It has potential to be boring. And it does. But there's a lot on the line here, man. And when you add in the history between these two and the frustration of Belal Muhammad, it's almost like Belal Muhammad, should he wins, could have his Leon Edwards moment, right? Where he's like, look at me now. Y'all all doubted me. Y'all all said I wasn't anybody. Look at me now. He's got that opportunity. Or Leon Edwards can win this fight, cement what he's done, do it in front of an English crowd.
That's going to be epic, by the way.
It's going to be epic. It's going to be epic.
Here's the reason I say that I was shocked by this line is, right, I understand the line, but I do think that Vegas trails still in MMA to a degree more than, baseball, basketball, football, the majors.
I would agree.
Are we? I think we're very confident to say that it's going to be pretty difficult for Belal Muhammad to take down Leon Edwards.
Yes.
It's going to be extremely difficult, right?
Defensive
and
wrestling
proved that time and time again.
Yep.
So I think when odd makers look at it, Leon Edwards, the better striker in range and very hard to take down. I think that's how they make this fight. I think people like me and you, we see nuances more or as equal as those other big areas. And the nuances is in the clinch. And the nuance is against the cage. And the nuance is he feels satisfied as long as he's not being taken down. Now, if I can see a scenario right off the bat where he, digs an underhook, pivots right away, pushes out, regains center, now I'm like, okay, Leon Edwards, outside of being the best welterweight in the world right now, has exponential growth here. And somebody really got into his ear. But I haven't seen that yet. And so that's where the nuances, where the line surprises me.
I agree. You're so right. I was thinking as you were saying that, like, if the first exchange, Belal shoves him to the cage and he immediately underhooks, pivots off, and goes back to the center, now you're looking for that live betting odds because you're like, whoa, load up on Edwards, load up on Edwards. He got it. He's got the fight IQ. He knows what he's got to do here. But it's interesting because the other thing is Belal's not going to tire. Like that dude's not getting fatigued. So he's going to be there for the full 5 rounds. You think about that finish for Leon Edwards, obviously insane high kick of Kamaru Usman. Prior to that, his last finish before that, I had to look. I was trying to think in my head, who was it? It was back in 2018, Peter Sabota. third round finish, 1 second left, by the way, in that one in a 3-round affair. He had a third round choke against Albert Tumanov back in 2016. That was also in the third. I mean, yeah, it's
Wow.
I just think this is going to be a more. I feel like, look, there's no question that in their first matchup, Leon Edwards looked to be the better man prior to the eye pokes. The eye pokes were awful, man. That was scary, man. I mean, we've seen a lot of eye pokes, but Belal Muhammad's panic as he thought he was blind, was gut-wrenching to watch. And I thought that was an easy, let's run it back immediately. And it's taken a long time to get back to this position. So there is a lot of stuff, building and brewing inside Belal Muhammad. He is not a trash talker. That's not who he is. He is actually a little bit. I mean,
he's becoming one.
I was gonna say it's kind of bubbling to the surface a little bit. You know what I mean? In this one more than ever, it's bubbling to the surface a little. But he's not the Conor McGregor-esque trash talker. He's more like, that guy's a dork and I don't like him. You're like, damn, we're going hard on him, Belal. But man, I think the storylines here make this tense, and the way the styles match up makes this tense too. Even if it does have the potential to be, not 25 minutes of Bonner versus Griffin. It's still going to be a fantastic fight.
Leon Edwards has to crack him, and has to crack him hard within the first minute and a half of this fight to put some fear into Belal Muhammad closing that distance. If that does not happen, just put your feet up on your recliner, kind of almost tune it out to a degree, because it's a rinse and repeat scenario.
Yeah.
Every
100%.
round.
And it's going to be, and if it does happen, if it happens at the end of round one, then you got to realize that it's the first exchange of each round that's going to be the most intriguing, right? Otherwise, it's going to be rinse and repeat every time. I mean, that's the benefit of the way mixed martial arts is set up in 5 rounds. You got to start at distance at the beginning every time. And so if Leon is not able to do that in round one, maybe he makes some adjustments moving forward. So big moment, man. Big moment for both these guys, man. Big moment. Because I'm telling you what, if Belal beats Leon, I could see a lot of people saying, people do this in mixed martial arts so much, it's going to be really easy to rewrite history and be like, okay, you knocked out Kamaru Usman, who was well past his prime at that point. He was working on no knees whatsoever. Then you beat Colby Covington. Come on, was that guy ever really that good?
2.5 years. And
what I mean? Like, it's going to be so easy to rewrite history. So I think Leon needs this one to kind of justify his title reign, to really put an exclamation point on, I am a champion. I'm not just a guy who scored a high kick and provided this insane moment. I'm a guy that worked a long ways to get here. Meanwhile, Belal Muhammad needs to show, like, hey man, I've been taking the slow and steady path to here, but I was doing all the right things along the way, and I was always that guy. I told you I was that guy, and I always was, man. This is the one who takes a setback here is going to tumble way down the charts, man, because I can't imagine either way this fight goes that people are saying you got to run it back again immediately. So there's going to be a lot of names that step up, and there's a lot of emerging talent in that division right now, right? I mean, this is a critical fight for both these guys.
Yeah, and I don't know. This is like one of those where both of these guys have so much to lose, because Leon Edwards, for everything you just said, and let's be honest, Belal Muhammad doesn't finish fights, right? So he's not going to get the promotional push, even if it is a razor thin. I just don't see him getting the push because the masses aren't clamoring to see him fight. A la press conference, the fan asked Belal Muhammad if he wins street fights by decision. You know what I mean? Which was classic, legendary, funny.
I don't like fan trash talk, but that was a pretty good one.
And so, and then Leon Edwards, for everything you said, like, both of these guys have so much to lose, and it's gonna take yeoman's work to get them back to that level. So we'll wait and see, I guess.
How about the fact that Dana White said that there was talk of 3 different opponents for Leon Edwards to fight at UFC 300, and then he was asked, was any of them Belal Muhammad, and he said no. Like, that wasn't even in the conversation. Like, I mean, and I like Belal Muhammad a lot. He's one of the nicest dudes. I had the honor of calling his final fight on the regional stage before he got into the UFC. I was actually calling it with Kamaru Usman of all people. So I mean, what a night that was. So I've liked the guy for a long time, but I mean, that's a reality. Dana White said that. That goes to tell you, you know, the type of excitement that they have around him in the UFC offices. There's a reason it took him this long. So there's a lot on the line for these two guys.
It is. And, but, you know, going back to the mental toughness of Belal Muhammad, he's going to right away close the distance. You know, he's got 6 finishes in 23 fights. Let me see when the last time he had a finish was. Oh, actually, Sean Brady, he did finish that one. So I take that back a little bit. But prior to that, it was back in, he had a rear naked choke in 2019. Prior to that, 2016. So, you know, proof's in the pudding there. We know that the UFC is going to push finishes, push exciting fighters, or ones that are going to get on the mic and cut epic promos. And Belal Muhammad just really doesn't fit any of those bills. So this is a huge make or break moment for the longevity of his career, in my opinion.
100%. 100%.
Ironically, some of the contrasts in the main event, I see a lot of that in the co-main event of Tom Aspinall and Curtis Blaydes. Curtis Blaydes' path to victory here is close the freaking distance, put him on the cage, you know, maybe get him down. You don't really necessarily have to, but make this grimy, make it dirty, take away the size, speed, and athleticism.
It's 100% true. Did you see, by the way, talking about betting lines, did you see the line on this one?
Yeah, it's big.
Big. The one I'm looking at is Tom Aspinall minus 380 and Curtis Blaydes plus 300. I mean, that is insane. Curtis Blaydes 18-4. I mean, the dude has fought all the best in the division. I mean, I don't think, well, I think on the one hand, it is a bit of a criticism in Curtis Blaydes because I do believe Curtis Blaydes is a victim of some of the things, the same things that Belal Muhammad is a victim of, right? And the fact that his style is not necessarily one of highlight reel finishes. It's more of grinding on someone and wearing them out. He's not a big trash talker either. You know what I mean? He's not somebody that gets on the microphone and just starts belting stuff out. He's gotten more and more comfortable with it over the years. Obviously, he has a speech impediment, and I think that probably lent to a lot of him just being more quiet early on in his career, but now he's starting to feel more comfortable in talking about it. But, you know, so I think a little bit of it may be just public sentiment criticism on Curtis Blaydes, but I think a lot of it is just, you know, people that are backing Tom Aspinall as that guy. And he does look like that guy to me, man. I think this dude is immensely talented, an incredible athlete in the heavyweight division, great grappling, great striking, incredible on a mic. You know what I mean? I think this guy is the whole package. Tom Aspinall also, but still shocking when you see a title fight, albeit of the interim variety, you know, a more of an upstart in Aspinall versus the established veteran in Blaydes, and to see that big of a wagering line between them, it is a little bit jarring to see, but I do understand it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the line comes at it from Curtis Blaydes has 4 losses in his UFC career. 2 to Francis Ngannou, 1 to Derek Lewis, and 1 to Pavlovich. What do all 3 of those guys and his 4 losses have in common? They are heavy. I mean, what?
I was going to say both of them, you know, all of them have decent punching power. I think you would say, you know, not bad,
right? I think it's safe to say that Tom Aspinall has one. His speed is next level at heavyweight.
Unbelievable.
But he's got the power to go along with it. We see the athleticism in Tom Aspinall, but out of all his wins, he's got 11 KOs, he's got 3 submissions, 0 decision wins. Okay, like we said, he's been out of the first round, I think, twice in his career, and out of those, 3 times in his career. 2 of them he's lost.
Intrigue.
Very intriguing. Listen, hey, I'm going to coach Curtis Blaydes really quick.
Let's hear it.
Cover up, run in, put him against the cage, and just, I don't give a shit if you get 10 stalling warnings. Do not expose your head, hold them as tight as you can, and just get to round number 2. Because what we know out of Tom Aspinall, what we know is he is a finisher. Okay? He's got speed. He's got power. We think he's got the chops everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Does he have the stamina? Does he have that grit in those other rounds? Don't know.
We don't know. And I think that's what's key to point out. We're not saying that's a criticism of it. We're saying it's a question that what do we talk? If we haven't seen it, we don't know. It's an unknown commodity.
Well, we've seen him into the second round 3 times. He's lost 2 of them. Now, that's not an indication of that. And they were a long time ago. But if I'm just coaching them, if history repeats itself, this is our path to victory.
Let me give you two incredible stats. I was just taking a look at the stats to help illustrate the clash of styles in this matchup. Tom Aspinall's strikes landed per minute in his UFC career, 7.72 strikes landed per minute in his UFC career. At the heavyweight division, that's unbelievable. Just to give you a comparison, Curtis Blaydes is 3.53. Meanwhile,
more than double.
Yeah, more than double. Meanwhile, in the grappling department, look at this. The takedown average for Curtis Blaydes over the course of 15 minutes, right? His average in 15 minutes in a UFC fight. Now, this is a 25-minute fight. 5.72 takedowns per 15 minutes.
So he's taking you down every round.
That's insane. That's insane. So
what about Aspinall? What about Aspinall?
3.46. So a little bit more than half of the takedown average. His takedown accuracy and his takedown defense are both 100%, but he hasn't seen a lot of those. He's been, getting things done with his hands. So clash of styles here, man.
And that's my point is you don't have, in my opinion, coaching Curtis Blaydes, you don't have to take him down. You don't. We need to see if that speed and power is there I'm confident it's going to be there in 2, but is it going to be there in 3, 4, and 5? That's the question to me.
I agree. And again, quick to point out, not a criticism. It's just saying, hey, look, I mean, you're not going in there being like, hey, man, why don't we just meet in the center and throw hands and see what happens? You know what I mean? Like, no, that's not going to play over. What are you looking to do when you craft a game plan? The great thing about MMA is you can craft a game plan and you can win or lose in an entirely different manner than you envisioned. You know what I mean? That's what we love about this sport is the unknown, right? But when you're creating a game plan, what are you looking for? You're looking for opportunities. You're looking for question marks. You're looking for, even if they're not known weaknesses, you're looking for potential weaknesses. We haven't seen this. Let's test them there and see what happens. And I completely agree with you. You've got to be saying, let's drag this guy to deep water a little bit. Let's take some of that athleticism out. Again, do the nerves. Here he is, title fight on home soil. You know what I mean? Obviously, Madison Square Garden wasn't a bad place to not have nerves and come out and look the way he looked at last time. But his Aspinall feel different when he's defending on a home soil and he's got the pressure of the local media and all that. Who knows? Just try, just see. So I love these title fights, man. I really do. I love these title fights. I'm excited by them.
It can be spectacular or it can be boring fight, kind of like the main event. I said I think that they have a lot of similarities in them. And where we say, well, Tom Aspinall, he's young, he's hungry. Of course, he's going to be in shape. He can go. But, dude, when you're fighting to get off the cage, digging under hooks, doing everything, your arms get heavy. Your breathing is impacted. I'm confident Tom Aspinall can handle all of it. I'm going to say that. I think he can. We just don't know. And that's if I'm coaching, what's your path to victory? That's your path to victory. Put him against the cage. Make him work. I know a grinder like Curtis Blaydes, a guy who grinds. That is his game. He can do that.
Yep.
Tom Aspinall isn't known as a grinder.
Nope.
So, let's implore that. We don't need to rack up damage and points early. We need to survive and make Aspinall work for everything that he's going to get. We can even concede round 1.
And Curtis Blaydes, again, we talk about stakes. A guy that has had to battle to get to this position once again, right? Again, not the most popular guy on the roster, not the flashiest guy on the roster, but, he continues to win fights and get himself in these positions, and he's here, man. So this is a big moment, man. A lot of stakes in these 2 fights, man. I'm super intrigued. And, by the way, can we just say the rest of that main card is looking fantastic, man. King Green, by the way, it's officially King Green now. If you didn't get the message now, it's the man The man went down to the courthouse and he filed the paperwork, and it's legal now. Like, it's
Are you
not
serious?
a nickname. Oh yeah, that is his
Okay, let me
legal
change
name.
my notes.
Yep, it is no longer Bobby King
No
Green.
more Bobby XX.
That's it. He got the paperwork. He made it official, son.
So is Bruce
King
introducing him as King this weekend?
Has to. That's his
So
name.
did he do this just for Manchester, and is he going to go back to Bobby after this?
No. He was talking about kind of like, that, I don't want to say just branding, but like that being who he is, you know what I mean? And making him something unique. So it was kind of a, an overall brand and marketing and just, career path decision. So he'd been mulling it over for a while. So it's King Green versus Paddy Pimblett. And boy, I love that one. And that one's nearly a pick 'em. King Green, a slight favorite in that. King Green, if you haven't seen him fight before, is one of the most fun athletes to watch compete ever, right? First of all, his entrance into the cage is the best in the UFC. He literally runs up the stairs and does the forward roll, a la wrestling and getting onto the mat, but it just looks cool, right? The way he does it looks cool. And the way he fights is fun, hands down, shoulder rolls, rolling with the punches, talking trash the whole time.
Yeah, he's got that street cred in the octagon.
He's the man. He is the absolute man. Meanwhile, Paddy Pimblett, as brash as they come, right? The guy that had all the hype, right? The hometown kid who had all the hype, who, some people have said, hey, some of the performances may have been a little flat. Maybe he hasn't lived up to the expectations yet. Although I would counter with you that the expectations were so sky high. The guy's getting Conor McGregor comparisons like in his debut just because he's a brash European guy. You know what I mean? So those are a little bit tough to meet. But this is a fantastic fight. And I'm going to throw it too, and I'll let you comment on which one you're looking forward to. I'm just talking about King. I was just holding. Well, oh no. See, Arnold Allen, Giga Chikadze, they're going to be great. Giga doesn't talk. Arnold and Giga stylistically, neither one of them talk a lot, but they're going to be a fun fight. Arnold Allen and Giga Chikadze are going to get lost at the press conference, right? Like if they happen to walk off stage at the press conference, don't be surprised because there's going to be a lot going on. King Green and Paddy Pimblett are going to go at it. But I'm telling you the one that could steal the show too as well. Muhammad Mokaev and Manel Kape are two very, very talented flyweights who both like to trash talk a lot.
Oh, you're talking about what I'm excited for at the press conference, not the fight.
Yeah. Well, the fight is, stylistically, it's different. But I'm just saying the whole build up to the week, you're right. Mokaev and Kape stylistically may not be as much of a banger as like Allen and Chikadze will be, but the build up and meaningful, right? The winner of Mokaev and Kape is going to be in a very enviable position in that topsy-turvy flyweight division right now. Mm-hmm. But I think they're going to have some trash talk along the way, and I think it's going to be meaningful. So I'm excited for that one as well. But yeah, from a stylistic perspective, Allen Chikadze. But look at that. We're talking about 2 intriguing title fights and then 3 main card fights that all have interest for different reasons. I think this is a spectacular pay-per-view.
I'm telling you, I'm really looking forward to King Green and Paddy Pimblett. For all the reasons you say, the personality types, but when you get in there, there's a level of grit and like Bobby Green has this level of grit with a arm down shoulder roll, but really just this I don't give a crap attitude why he's doing it, but we know he's still ultra technical with it. But I'm going to say more, I guess if the general person is going to look at it, more of a brawler-esque type guy, right?
Sure.
Versus the ultra technical, because Paddy Pimblett, for all he talks the big game and whatnot, the guy's got wizardry skills.
Yes, he does.
And I'm anxious to see the one thing that we have criticized, or people, not necessarily us, but people have criticized Paddy Pimblett, especially in that the fight that most people said he lost, is he got bullied in the fight to a degree. Can King Green bully him? I think he can, but will he? Is that skills and, I don't know. That's where I know that I think the odds makers are leaning towards Green, but for that reason, it's the bullying nature of him, the walking him down. And, I don't see Paddy Pimblett being able to explosively come in on King Green, like he can on some lesser ranked talents. And that's where Paddy Pimblett does his best work, being able to rush in, kind of dip under to a degree, take him up, take his back. It's a wrap. It's not going to be easy to get to Bobby Green, the ultra vet, that way.
It really, this is just a step up in level of experience and competition for sure. I mean, you'll love to see it. So I'm excited for this one. I mean, King Green did have the big knockout loss to Jalen Turner. So, I mean, even though as great as he is on the feet, I mean, he's shown he can get clipped. But, I mean, the guy battled back, got the win over Jim. I mean, look, man, this is a good fight. It's a good test for both guys. You know what I mean? It really is. I mean, King Green has fought everybody, will fight everybody. He's fun to watch compete. Paddy Pimblett, this is a big step up in competition. I know he's coming off a Ferguson win, but not that version of Ferguson. This is a big one. I love this fight, man. I really do love this fight.
Yeah. So, well, that's exciting. So you're commentating in Tampa Friday night. You jumping on early flight. What time's the start time on Saturday? Is it?
It's normal start time for us. So yeah. So which. Man, I feel bad. I will say this. Shout out to the UK fans because I've done this before where you're watching a fight at like 5 o'clock in the morning in the arena. This is actually being put on normal time for us here in the United States. So the prelims 6:15 p.m. Eastern, main card 10 p.m. Eastern. So super early in the morning for the UK fans. I know there was some talk about that. Look, it's a tough decision for the UFC to do that, right? I mean, they have the statistics. They have the data. They lose big revenue when they move to a Saturday afternoon card with a pay-per-view, right? Just because the viewing audience is so used to seeing it at a certain time for years and years and month after month.
Yeah, I mean, kids got soccer, baseball games, yada, 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 yada.
Yeah, so it's tough. It was a tough call, so I feel bad for them. So, yeah, I've got the fights on Friday night in Tampa, Florida, and then I'm jumping home and an early flight back to Vegas, and I'll be watching that one here in Vegas. So,
all righty. I may be calling you because I'll be in Vegas this weekend as well.
Oh, what's coming on in Vegas?
I'm going to do some training with Big John McCarthy this weekend.
Oh, that's right. That's this weekend coming up with that workshop. Great point. Yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah, hit me up when you're in, man. I'd love to at least grab a frosty beverage. If not, come see what you got going on. Like I said, I'll be back early Saturday.
Yeah, but I'll just be kind of outside of that. I'll be held up in my hotel room. So yeah, maybe we get a frosty beverage. We'll watch the fights on Saturday night.
It turns out there is a place or two in this town of Las Vegas to get yourself a frosty beverage and watch some fights. We have been known to do that. Hey, like I said, Friday night, if you got a chance on UFC Fight Pass, take a chance. We got CFFC 133 from Tampa, Florida. We got history on the line, man. It's a really good main event. It's the first title unification bout in CFFC history, right? Because inevitably CFFC champions, they win a belt, and then a big show comes calling, right? So they immediately end up going to the UFC or Contender Series or Bellator or PFL. Well, Robert Wiley, who has this amazing story, right? I mean, he was away from the game for almost 4 years. He was battling some personal demons, some addiction, some things of that nature, and kind of thought he was just going to give up on his dream. And his family was like, encouraged him, like, no, man, you're not done with this yet. You're not done with the sport yet. Get back in there. Chase your passion. We support you, and we know how much you love this. And he did. And he came back. He won the belt. He defended it, and he was kind of hoping in the meantime, like, hey, a call would come. So we had, tried to get him for another title fight, and he's like, let me chill for a little bit because I think the call's coming. We're like, all right, that's fine, but we got to keep going, right? So Marquez Forrest, this guy is fun to watch fight, man. He's undefeated. He was undefeated as an amateur, won a CFFC Next Gen title as an amateur, now undefeated as a pro as well, won the interim belt with a big win over a highly respected Robert Vericchio, another undefeated blue chip prospect. So now we got interim title holder versus title holder in the unification bout. I think it's going to be a lot of fun in the main event. Bragging rights on the line, undisputed title on the line, but potentially a big show invitation on the line as well. So that should be a great one. Co-main event is good as well. Max Quinones versus Gustavo Villamil. Flyweight fight there. Max Quinones, a guy that looked like he was going to the show, had a setback, has since rebounded, but he's facing the newcomer, Gustavo Villamil, who is a really good grappler. And the way Max Quinones lost his one fight was he got out-wrestled over the course of 15 minutes. So now he's kind of like having to face that same, that same demon down again. And the guy coming in, Gustavo Villamil, making his CFFC debut, he's probably looking at it going, I got the blueprint. I'm in the co-main event, UFC Fight Pass in my promotional debut. I'm just going to execute the game plan I've already seen, and I'm going to be the guy that's probably fighting for a title in my next fight because we got Belal Hassan looking out there that maybe is going to fight in a flyweight fight. So as big as the UFC is, of course, man, we got a fun CFFC card on Friday night if you can tune in.
if you guys have not, listen, we sing CFFC's praises all the time. If you're not hip to the promotion, get hip to it. UFC Fight Pass. I had an opportunity to be on that card as the ref, but I took the opportunity to go out and train with Big John. But I did run into Mr. Shipman, the executive director of Florida, yesterday in Louisville. We talked about it.
Nice.
So, hopefully there's an opportunity to come back down there again. I'd like soon. To see it. And he said the door's always open whenever they want to use you. I'll grant the license. So I love it,
man. This is CFFC's 9th event in Tampa, so certainly it's become a really good market for us, and one that I don't make the booking decisions there, but I imagine we'll continue to come back. So hopefully you can make it out. The big John McCarthy, man, how excited are you for that? Right? I mean, this is a workshop with the dude that literally wrote the rules. I mean, if you watch MMA at all, you know who Big John McCarthy is. But I mean, if you don't recognize, I mean, he was actually instrumental in not only being an early face in the UFC, but literally writing the rule book. And now you get to work.
Still is instrumental in writing rule books. I mean, if you don't think they're not calling Big John, then I got oceanfront property in Arizona to sell you. You know what I mean? Here's what I'm excited about. I realize that I'm going to be walking in, and I don't think a lot of established refs are going to go kind of take this course. You have a lot to lose. You have something like a 90% fail rate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I heard that.
But and I happen to think I'm a very high level ref, but guess what? I'm coming prepared. Here's my notes already. I'm studying already. I got my notes right here. Okay. But I'm walking into it as a seasoned referee, probably already going to know, let's call it 85 to 90% of what he's going to be teaching. Right.
Right.
But somebody for like where it benefits me and why I don't think a lot of refs that have refed in the UFC or big time regional promotions are almost, I don't want to say I'm cool to do this, but like humble themselves to go work with guys looking to break in is if I already know 90, 95%, let's call it 98%, but those 2% nuances that I can pick his brain over the course of 3 days. I have a notebook like this with like 8 pages of situational stuff. In this situation, what would happen? This happened in Rose. There's the was it a slam? Did Rose get spiked? Did she not get spiked? Everybody has a different opinion. Let's hear it from John himself.
Well, and that's beautiful, man. I would expect nothing less out of you ahead of it, but that is so cool, and so I can't wait to hear more about it. Hopefully next week maybe we can hear some more about it, but that's the thing that I think is so cool about being with John McCarthy, right? Because whether it be his own podcast that he does now or conversations that you have with him in passing, obviously I've been fortunate enough to cross paths him over the years. What I love about it is when he talks about stuff, when you talk about why a rule is what a rule is, he can tell you the rule is this way because it used to be this way. And then UFC 33, this happened, and it made us realize that this was a danger. So we needed to make this change. You know what I mean? I love that, and I'm talking about in any walk of life, but in mixed martial arts, when somebody can tell you, hey, this is why we do what we do, not just, well, here's the rule and here's how it's supposed to be executed. Because I'm one of those guys that I imagine is a lot like you. And I'm like, well, why? Well, why is it that way? Like, why do we do that? Or couldn't we do it? No, let me tell you why. We tried it this way before and we do this. And let me tell you why. And that guy has been there. And when he talks about experiences, a lot of those things are not just him saying as an observer or as an administrator, but he can be like, I was the guy that was in the cage when that happened. And let me tell you the way I reacted, what my mindset was, what my thought process was. So, man, what a cool and unique opportunity, man. I to be honest with you, I really, I need to take his class. I've talked about it before. I need to take his class as well one of these days. It's always tough because he comes and does it around a UFC event, and generally my other duties have me busy and I can't take part. But I'm going to commit to make that happen at some point as well, just for my own educational process. You know what I mean? I don't know that I ever see myself being a licensed referee, although who knows? I plan on being involved in this sport for the rest of my foreseeable future, so who knows? But just from an educational standpoint, there's no better place to get an education.
Here's the funny thing, and this is what gives me the most worry. Like, John just basically told me, he's like, listen, Eric, you know your stuff. You know how to ref. I've seen you ref tons of times, right? But you need to know the even the nuances of reffing, that situations you haven't been in yet. So when you are there, a lot of refs can know the rule, but can they cite the rule and the theory of the rule and the application of the rule in real time? That's what everybody needs to learn. And I think that's what makes a really good ref, John McCarthy, great ref, Jason Herzog, great ref. A Kerry Hatley, great ref. So that's what I'm looking forward to be, because I know what I know, and to degrees, I know what I don't know yet, and I don't know what has not happened to me yet. So I'm looking to get that pressed upon me. But you need to go into this needing to know the names of hundreds of submissions, takedowns, tosses. Like, you have to be able to cite, because peek behind the curtain, when a submission happens, the official scorekeeper or the commission says, okay, what was your call, Eric? And I'm like, okay, it was a submission by rear naked choke, a submission by key lock, a submission by whatever. So you need to know the names of all them. And I know the names of pretty much all of them. But then there's these judo Japanese names. And I'm not good at that. And that's what all these note cards are here, right? Uchimata, Harigoshi, Sayanagi, I know that one. Osato Gari, Tominagi, right? And then I have my explanation on the back written down of how I know all these, but I know the American translation of wrestling to it.
Every time I call fights with Hinato Mokano, he calls an arm triangle or a side choke, he calls it the katagatami, which is the traditional technique name, and I love it. You know what I mean? Like, it's so cool when they reference. I love anybody that uses that technology. But now you got to study it and learn it.
Yeah, because it's like, basically, Tominagi, it's a front headlock with an underhook, and you pull guard and flip over him. It's almost like a guard pull with a kip up. That's almost how I explain it. But the official Japanese terminology is a Tominagi, FYI.
I love it. I love it.
Osotogari. It's grab your opponent with both hands, step forward to the side without turning around, then reap your opponent's standing leg from the outside. So it's an outside trip.
An outside trip.
It's an outside trip, right? In wrestling, we call that an outside trip, but I need to know the Japanese translation for it. Bam. And guess what? I even put it down. Takedown trip.
I love it. I love it.
So I can tell you, people say that refs don't take this stuff serious. I take it ultra serious.
I love it. I'm excited, man. That's cool. I can't wait to hear all about it, man.
I'm aiming for 100%. That's the goal. It's the goal.
That's challenging. I like it though. Set the bar high, right?
Got
Set
my
the bar.
card.
I've heard that like a ton of people fail. Like people take it like multiple times. You know what I mean? Like, it's educated. I know like journalists have taken it before and failed it, even though they work in MMA. You know what I mean? Because the knowledge level is that high.
Yeah, and then on top of knowing all the techniques, you need to know the rule set back and forth. You need to apply it. You need to study replay wide. It's so much more comprehensive. I always say this, like, you go to an ABC seminar or class, that's your trade school tech. Right. They teach you how to do it at a high level in a very efficient manner. Yep. This is getting a doctorate.
I love it. Well said. Well said. Look at this. My man's continued education, man. He's up there in Louisville doing a BKFC seminar. He's heading out to Las Vegas to do the Big John McCarthy seminar. Much respect.
I don't want anybody to say, why is this guy here? He doesn't have the merit to be here. That's the one thing I don't ever want anybody to say about me. I can screw up here and there, but I don't want anybody to say he doesn't have the knowledge and the merit to be here.
I love it, man. Honestly, look, I don't think continued education is a bad thing at all among officials as a whole. You know what I mean? Just little refresher courses, little reviewers. And I get it, man. Everybody's like, I've been doing this for a long time. Yeah, but maybe something new has popped up. We see techniques evolve all the time. We see situations evolve all the time. Or just a refresher. There's so many random things that are just minor, that happen 1 out of 100,000 bouts, and you've never seen it before. Why not get a refresher and reminder so when it happens, boom, you're automatic. You don't even have to think about it because it's drilled in there and you just go to it. In the same way, a black belt is going to practice a submission 1,000,000 times. You know what I mean? So that when it's time to go, you don't even have to think about it. You just do it.
And you do need continuing education, hence the down opponent rule. Change it. Wait until, and now it's got to be lawyered, written up, but it's signed, sealed, and delivered. It's signed, sealed, and delivered.
Can't wait, man. All that stuff's happening this week.
12-6, it out.
Dumb rule.
Right? Dumb rule. Dumb rule. Gotta go. Takedown rule. You can't play this game no more. Put your damn knee down. Once the lawyers write it up, it's official.
I love it. I love it.
Well, good stuff. That was a fun episode. We went a little long, but Hey,
but we went 60 minutes short last week, so it kind of makes
we understand. Well, good stuff. With that being said, for John Morgan, I'm Eric McMahon. Enjoy the fights.